Jared Goff, Aidan Hutchinson, and the Lions head to Cincinnati to take on Jake Browning, Jahmyr Chase, and the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a Bengals team that is reeling after a terrible loss on the road at the Denver Broncos. One of the ugliest games that I've ever watched. I'm sure some of you have watched. And we need to start with Browning, but I am going to defend him slightly because the offensive line has been horrid through the first month of the season. Burrow in the first couple of games was under immense pressure like we've seen throughout his career. But Browning has to play better, simply enough. He hasn't gotten any help from the run game. I know that they've tried to get Chase Brown going. He's an explosive, dynamic back coming off of that injury last year, frankly, against the Denver Broncos late in the season. But there's nothing in the run game. He's not getting protected. And none of that bodes well going against a Detroit team that you can imagine they will need to score a ton of points. This is a Detroit Lions offense that over the past two seasons has been one of two teams, them and the Baltimore Ravens. They're the only two teams that have scored over 1,000 points. The Lions led the NFL in scoring a season ago by over 2 points. And yet again, guess where they are? Right back up at the top. First in the league in scoring. They're actually averaging even more than they were a season ago. You can't fault them for destroying the Chicago Bears and putting up 52 points. You play who you play, but going up against this Cincinnati defense that people were expecting to get a little bit of help from a returning Trey Hendrickson taking the first-round pick in Jahmyr Stewart, but that could have not gone any worse. They've gotten little to no production out of him. He has not been healthy, and this is a Cincinnati defense that is once again one of the worst in the league. 30th in the league in yards, 27th in points per game. Now, are they getting help from the offense? They're having to stay out there on the field because the offense isn't keeping drives alive and moving the sticks and scoring points. So the Cincinnati defense has been forced to be put in situations that aren't helpful. Like last year when Cincinnati had a very high-flying offense. This team was 10th in points, top 10 in points and yards. They were able to at least stay in a bunch of games, but because of the nature of the way they are moving the ball down the field at pass-heavy attack, that's going to lead to a lot of incompletions. The time of possession won't always be up there in high numbers. So the defense, I'm trying to defend them a little bit, keep a positive narrative surrounding them. But frankly, they've been terrible. And the offense has been even worse. Last in the NFL in yards per game and 30th in points per game. Losing Joe Burrow is devastating. I said once that injury came out that if they can find a way to be 8-6, 8-7 when Joe Burrow, if he potentially were to return in December, that they were able to fight for a spot, they could have a chance. But the way that they have looked and what the schedule looks like with the teams and the games that they will be playing, it really does not look that good because they are playing a Detroit Lions team that is very tough to stop. Now, I talk about all the time, what are the pieces you need to be a Super Bowl contender? Well, you need two dominant outside threats because if you only have one great receiver, let's say if you're the Lions and you only had Amon St. Brown, then teams would be able to rotate the coverage, take him away, and force you go to somewhere else. Now, Detroit has Jameson Williams, and then they've got Sam Laporta, both terrific weapons. Also matched with that is one of the best offensive lines in football to go with a fantastic run game. I think it's a pretty nice surprise for Lions fans, and they expected Jahmyr Gibbs to be the complete lead back this season, getting more carries and more yards per carry and more explosive. And then David Montgomery is coming out and having an incredible season. Beautiful surprise for them. They're not at all going to be complaining. David Montgomery and Gibbs easily far and wide form the best backfield in the world. How does Cincinnati try and stop that? Well, you have to choose. It's that simple. You can't play with more than 11 guys, so that means you have to choose. Are we going to try and take away the run game, or are we going to try and take away the pass? In order to have a chance against the Lions, you have to stay out of 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2. Why? Because this team loves going for it on 4th down, but when they have that balance on 3rd and 3 and they can line up under center, you just frankly don't have much of a chance. You have to be able to get them into obvious passing downs where you know that you can rush for or mix up what you will be doing, simulated pressure, having 6 guys at the line and be able to try and at least slow down that Lions offense. That's why it's pivotal to try and win on those early downs. What I would try to do is 7 guys in the box, choose one, take away the run game, and try and put the ball in Jared Goff's hands. But as he has shown over the last number of seasons, is he is more than capable of beating very good teams, let alone struggling defenses. I would argue that this is the Bengals squad going up against the Lions that will be the worst defense that Detroit probably faces this season. Again, aided by an offense that has struggled. The best way that the Bengals, frankly, can combat the Lions offense is to not have the Lions offense on the field and have successful drives. Do what Cleveland did for a bit of that game last week. Was Quinshon Judkins was successful on the ground. They were trying to get Joe Flacco easy completions and methodically move the ball down the field. The problem was Joe Flacco has this urge to turn the football over. 2 pretty bad picks in that game, and Detroit was able to capitalize. I know it was a 10-point game late what stages third quarter, but it really didn't feel that close. And then they got the punt return for a touchdown and seal the deal in that game against what is a very good Cleveland Brown defense. The Bengals are very familiar with that. So Cincinnati, you have to find a way. Jahmyr Chase, I know he was going up against Pat Surtain, but sweeps, find the way to get the ball into his hands early on in this game. Detroit is without DJ Reed. He has been an incredible acquisition for Detroit. There are injuries with this Lions team. Again, Aleem McNeil has returned to practice. That is good news. So they're awaiting him to be taken off of the physically unable to perform list. There's a 21-day window where that needs to happen if he is to be available to come back to play in the 2025 regular season. So what does that leave as far as the questions for the Lions secondary going up against arguably the best duo of wide receivers in football? You've got Terrion Arnold. He's been a very good corner out of there. Obviously, a former first-round pick. Amik Robertson looks to play in that cornerback 2 slot, taking the duties away from DJ Reed, coming out of the slot corner position, which he can play, and then Avonte Maddox going into that slot position to play there in nickel situation. So this is a Lions team that will be tested. Cincinnati, if you're formulating a game plan, I'm trying to get Jahmyr Chase 12, 13 targets. He's still, in my opinion, one of the best, easily. If you're a Lions fan, you'd have to agree, easily one of the best wide receivers in football. I would be curious, to be honest. If you ask people, would you rather have Amon-Ra or Jahmyr Chase? I bet there's a heaping of Lions fans that say, we love our guy in Amon-Ra. You can't go wrong with either one of these. Speaking of Amon-Ra, he is clearly one of the best 5 wide receivers in the NFL now, and what he's able to do at the tops of the league in touchdowns, right up there, trying to close in on Puka Nacua, running away with that thing in yards. I believe he's got like 100 yards on the next closest person, but he's getting targeted like 13 times a game. But Detroit's got a monster in Amon-Ra. He does everything. He's the do-it-all, be able to block. It's fun to watch him because of the energy that he plays for the other guys around him. Such an unselfish player to have a guy like that in your locker room. Again, paired with, of course, the running back duo. Montgomery or Gibbs could be stars by themselves in their own right, but being able to pair them, it sort of makes you think about how special a lot of Bengals fans watching this right now, sorry, Lions fans, is the Ohio State Buckeye running back room a season ago with Quinshon Judkins and Henderson kind of familiar to what this looks like. Henderson kind of like your Gibbs, your bursty guy, and then Montgomery kind of like the Judkins, just power over you, and he's going to be able to pick up those hard yards. It's very similar to this, and you saw what that did for them in their run to win the national championship and how good this Detroit Lion team is with those 2 backs. It's funny to kind of look at those similarities to college at the elite levels and then the NFL. On the defensive side for Detroit, another guy in the middle there, Tyleik Williams. He's been impressive so far this season, immediately being an impact player on the interior. Unfortunately for Cincinnati, I got to come back to Jahmyr Stewart. This is, first of all, you took him over Tyleek. Tyleek was more than available for you to take. There were multiple offensive linemen. They decided we want to go on that side of the ball instead of maybe do we get a Josh Simmons at left tackle? Do we go with Josh Connerly at the right tackle, who's now for the Commanders? Do we take a Donovan Jackson, who's now a left guard, and he's actually dealing with a wrist injury for Minnesota? But they decided we're going on that side of the ball for the trenches to impact games, and it hasn't panned out. Whereas Detroit, they get a pick later on in the first round, immediately an impact player. You kind of get where I'm going with this. And then Isaac Tisslaw has been an impact player for Detroit. The second rounder, Tate Ratledge, already looks like a plug-and-play 12-year starter for Detroit in the interior of that offensive line. It's incredible that they lose a guy like Frank Ragnow. They're dealing with some injuries there, and they're figuring that out right now. But already, this is a Detroit Lion offensive line that looks to be getting better every single week. You heard Tony Romo on that first broadcast of the year against Green Bay talking about how this is the worst this offensive line will look. They're going to get better, continue to improve, and that's exactly what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. They've continued to lean and get better there. The pass protection's improved, and they have tremendous balance. As far as a prediction goes for this game, I don't think you will be very surprised. I think it's a big blowout. The Detroit Lions, I believe, are a different class than even what Denver possesses in this offense. That team's got a couple of really good wide receivers and a good run game with Harvey and Dobbins, and they've got Sutton and Franklin on the outside. But this Lions team, they are so tough to get off of the field because of all of those weapons that they have. Immediately, I'm thinking something like 40 points for Detroit. I'll say 41-17. This is a really tough matchup for Cincinnati. You feel bad for a team because if they had Joe Burrow, game on, baby. This could be one of the classics of the season, a potential incredible game, the best game of the week possibly. This game was scheduled late in that afternoon window because of the scheduling was thinking Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, two of the best teams potentially in the league. This could be a great matchup. Ohio versus Michigan. This would be incredible to see this one come out, right? And it's just not turned out that way. I feel bad. I feel for you Bengals fans. Lions fans aren't feeling bad for anybody after all of the injuries and the way their season wound up. But Aidan Hutchinson, my gosh, does this guy look like he's already on an incredible place to maybe be the defensive player of the year, looking exactly like he was a season ago and maybe a little bit more twitch and burst. I appreciate you so much for watching. Please, if you enjoyed this Blitz with Blender video, subscribe for more content in the future. I make NFL and college videos every single day, so I am so thankful for you sticking around and watching this video. Stay tuned for more in the future, and I will see you next time. Thank you. Best player in college football. That Georgia and Ohio State game, New Year's Eve, is going to be a classic.
Josh Blender, hi everybody, I'm Josh